Hello, first-time people watching one of my mountain videos. I am Koi, I grew up in Calgary, and I have spent a lot of time backpacking, hiking, scrambling, and mountaineering in the Canadian Rockies. As a local, I find it hilarious when I see a video or a website with a clickbait title claiming that something is the best or one of the best that the Canadian Rockies has to offer. Or better yet, a list of the most common things to do in these mountains, where the word common has cleverly been replaced by the word best. If you have clicked on this video, then I am assuming that you are planning a trip to the Canadian Rockies, and you want to either assure yourself that you should in fact go to Lake Louise, and all the information that you have found hyping it up is correct, or you have already found 1,000 sources telling you that there is a lake called Lake Louise, and that you should go to it, and you are looking for information about something that isn't Lake Louise. In either case, I hope that you continue to watch this video. I hope it can help you take a different approach to your trip planning. To be clear, I am not going to give you a list of the best places to visit in the Canadian Rockies as I claim in the title. I think that is an extremely difficult question to answer, which depends on a variety of factors such as weather, time of year, fitness level, fear of heights, etc. Besides, the Canadian Rockies cover a lot of area, of which I have not traveled nearly enough. Instead, I will try to give you a few trip planning techniques, and hopefully you will be able to plan an awesome trip that fits your own needs. This will be a list of ways that you can hopefully plan a fantastic trip in the Canadian Rockies, but the list will be disguised as a list of places. So let's get started. Coming in fifth on the list is generic glacial lake without hotel. If you are going to plan a first trip to the Canadian Rockies, then the first thing you need to do is throw away whatever preconceived notions you have about these mountains, especially those coming from people who do not spend a lot of time in the area. I am almost certain that in your research so far, you have come across Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, supposedly must-see glacial lakes, one with a giant hotel at its end. The only thing particularly special about these lakes is that there is a road up to them, and one has a giant hotel on its end. There are countless glacial lakes in the Canadian Rockies, with just as good, if not better views, and far less tourists. If you drive just a half hour north of Lake Louise, you will run into Bow Lake, which is right beside the road and just as nice. Keep going and you will hit Waterfowl Lake, which may be my favorite of the three. If you are willing to leave the road, then the options of what you can find become endless. So don't believe that something is the best just because that is what many people are telling you, especially if these people have only went to the common tourist destinations in the area. Coming in fourth on the list is trail which exists to named pass. The Canadian Rockies have many amazing trails which are maintained by the parks. You have probably heard about some of these, such as Plain of Six Glaciers, Johnston Canyon, Peyto Lake, and Sentinel Pass. You have also probably not heard about some of these, such as North Molar Pass or Deception Pass. The reason why you haven't heard of these places? Well, I don't have any fucking idea. The Skokie area lies right across the highway from Lake Louise and probably receives less than 1/20th of the foot traffic. The trails in the Skokie area are some of my favorite in the Canadian Rockies so far. It is a somehow hidden gem a couple kilometers from possibly the tourist-trapped capital of Western Canada. The slopes of the Lake Louise ski hill literally lie above the road you walk up on the start of your way into the Skokie area. If you are looking for what to do in the Canadian Rockies, maybe just check out what actually exists, and then look into what it's like, instead of finding a list of what someone said was the best. Coming in third on the list is random backcountry campground. This point is not so much a knock on the campgrounds that are out there. The campgrounds in the Canadian Rockies are at amazing locations. Unfortunately, backcountry campgrounds typically have 10 spots available, and booking must be done far in advance, which means you don't have any fucking idea what the weather will be like. Front country campgrounds have more spots, but reservations fill up quick, and you arrive at the same problem. Fortunately, if you do some digging around, you will find out that there are a couple campgrounds that have first come, first served spots on the Icefields Parkway, and a 300-meter walk-in one at Takaka Falls. Arrive at a reasonable time in the morning, and there is a good chance you will find a campground. There is also random camping allowed off the David Thompson Highway if you are outside the national parks. The backcountry campgrounds would seem to be more of an issue, But that is actually not the case because I have discovered something called a backcountry zone reservation. If you are a mountaineer, you often go places that don't have campgrounds close by, so you apply for a backcountry zone reservation, which basically means you call the parks office and tell them where you want to camp. As long as it isn't too close to a trail or other campground and you aren't camping on vegetation, then you're good to go. There never seems to be an issue with too many people making these reservations, so you should always be able to camp in the backcountry if you wish to. Just pretend you're climbing a mountain close to where you want to camp. I always book the day before I camp, and the $10 reservation fee gets waived as well, so that's a bonus right there. Coming in second on the list is Unnamed Trail to Photosphere Point. This is a map of the Canadian Rockies, and this is a map of what the Canadian Rockies would look like if you had to reconstruct them by pulling information from the internet. Lake Louise and the Banff and Jasper town sites would basically be everything that exists, and all the mountains on the Icefields Parkway would be forgotten. The Icefields Parkway is where most of the large mountains in the park, or the parks, reside, by the way. I find that the best way to find places you want to go is to get off the internet search engines and get looking at some maps. Granted, I plan a lot of mountaineering trips, and that may be a more useful tip for mountaineers, but I think that people looking for just a hike can apply the same logic that I do. Topographic maps, such as OpenTopo Map, can easily show you where the highest mountains are and where some little used routes may go, while CalTopo is great for finding trails and their distances and even getting an idea on the slope angle of the terrain you may be traversing. Photospheres on Google Maps can show you what types of views you can expect from some of the places you plan to visit, and Google Earth is fantastic for visualizing what terrain you will have to go through and what you might be able to see along the way there. Searching through maps can sometimes take a while, but if you spend enough time at it, you will probably find some cool stuff that you would not think to do otherwise. Many of my favorite trips have been inspired by looking through maps, not just in the Canadian Rockies, and if you are going to spend a lot of money and precious vacation time to visit these mountains, then you should be willing to put in some time doing research looking at a couple maps. Coming in number 1 on the list is Snowdon Pass via Lightning Struck Trail. Last year, one of my friends from Ontario was planning a trip to the Canadian Rockies, and I was giving them some advice on where to go. I asked when she was planning her visit, and she said June. The advice I gave was to not come in June because there would be snow everywhere and to instead plan for July or August. I, of course, gave her other recommendations afterwards. When planning trips to the mountains, you have to be very aware of snow conditions and weather conditions. Unlike many areas near the coast, the Canadian Rockies get a shit snowpack. Walking on snow in June is almost a guaranteed way to be post-holing, unless you are on a well-traveled pack-down trail. There are various webcams available to judge the amount of snow in the mountains, including skilouise.roundshot and the Banff Jasper collection. But probably my favorite would be soar.earth, which gives satellite imagery from usually just a couple of days earlier. This can also be useful for judging smoke levels. Weather is another huge factor when planning your trip. Go to where it's sunny. Nobody wants to be out on a rainy day. Weather in the mountains can vary a lot, so you will probably want to check out a couple different weather forecasts. I start with the Weather Network to try to get the large weather patterns around the major tourist locations. If things look good, then I focus on where I plan on going, using Mountain Weather and Spot WX. Spot WX is great because it has a variety of weather models and it tells you the weather model resolution and shows you the grid cell as well. A more refined grid is more tailored to the exact point you want to go to. If all the models show that the weather will be good and the snow conditions look good as well, then you're probably going to have a great trip. It's better to have a worse hike with good conditions than to do a better one in a lightning storm. This concludes my list of the best places to visit in the Canadian Rockies. If you want some recommendations on specific places to go, then leave a comment with the time of year you're planning on coming and what you are more specifically looking for. I will try to give you something good to aim for. If you have enjoyed this video, then you could subscribe to this channel, or not, or whatever. I don't have any plans to make more videos like this, but if you have an idea for a video or you want me to talk about something, then let me know in the comments and maybe I'll get around to making it.